Good morning. We'll get started here, and first and foremost, I'm Sam Lee. I'm the president this year of the Chamber, and we've got a great group of people that are going to speak to us this morning, our representatives and our senator. We'd like to first foremost thank PNC and Sam's Club for sponsoring the event this morning. Thank you all. You know, this is our first Rooster Booster of the year, and we've got a great turnout. So far, I'll kind of give you a little information about the two events that we've had so far this year, will be in the luncheons. We've had a really good turnout. We had one at Asbury last week. We had over 60 people that came out for that. So just keep those on your calendar throughout the year. Please join us, because we've got some good presentations that are being given, so we'd like for you to join those. First and foremost, I'd like to thank Kim King for being here today with us. And Bob Dameron. And Tom Buford. What we'll do, they're going to come up and just kind of give a State of the Union of how they've seen things progress throughout the legislative this year, and give us a background on what's going on vision for both Jessamine County and both at the state level too. So I don't know who's going to start, but have you all picked? Are you going to draw?
It doesn't matter.
Yeah. So Senator Tom Buford.
Thank you. Thanks, Sam. Cover everything, and then we'll just say yes. Okay. Well, Bob said just cover everything, and they'll say yes. But in the Senate, things are certainly not quite as active as the House. You can imagine the number of individuals and the number of legislation down there. But we had, quite frankly, have had a very good session. It's been smooth. It's been without a tremendous amount of controversy, and that is always the case when you have no money to divide. The individuals are not there crying a lot for different appropriations that might be available. Most of them are asking that we do not cut their budget very much. As budgets are being cut, there is somewhat of a spread across all, and those of you who are, you know, in the courthouse, in the clerk's office, or the county judge office, or the sheriff, or the PVAs, the circuit clerks, this is a dangerous time as we try to come together and divide the monies that are available. In Frankfort, many departments will take a 5% cut or larger, some maybe 3%, but there will be cuts made in many of the departments down there. With that said, we are doing the best we can for the post-secondary, that is the universities in education. K through 12, we're trying to resist any issues there. We do have the snow calamity days, we call them, or however, forgiveness days, or whatever. There's a bill that came out of the Senate. It has an odd formula. I think when it goes to the House, they're going to make some changes and return it back to us. So I don't know what the final outcome will be, but obviously there will be some days that we have to forgive. We have some schools that have probably missed in excess of 33, 34 days. When you get into the mountains and you've got the Palisades and the cliffs and the rivers and the ravines, the buses just cannot move. If they got down in there, they could not get out. So school is closed in those districts more so than here in what we consider flat land, even though we have areas like High Bridge where they have to go up and down cliffs, Camp Nelson, and those areas that you're all very much aware of. And Mercer County, we have issues like that, and Kim and I both have Washington County at the same time, and I have Garrett County with Fayette County. Fayette County usually not too much trouble, but they've had an excessive amount of days that they've had to miss also. So we have to take that into account, and even some of you may say, well, why would you give the school just a free day, send the money, they don't have to go. Listen, even though the students aren't there and the teachers may be out, that school still has its expenses. They have contracts with the teachers that have to be paid. The schools are open, the heat's on, the utilities, the maintenance, the insurance, everything that takes place. Even sometimes when school doesn't meet, the ball games take place, the basketball, whatever the case may be. So they have expenses that they cannot ignore, and they must be paid for that, and we understand that, and this has to be dealt with. So I voted for a bill yesterday. I think when it comes back to the House, it'll probably be changed somewhat, and that's okay, because I think we did have the agreement of the Department of Education, but we do need now to be sure that we've got the superintendents are all right, the administration, the school board members, and the teachers, of course, but what's in best line for the students. So with that said, that's something that we will be dealing with. Other issues, you heard a lot about tax reform. At this moment, we have not done anything, and I do not believe there will be any tax increases that I see on the horizon. Now, any tax increase legislation starts in the House. Boy, are we lucky in the Senate for that constitutional issue. We don't have to start those. Sometimes we have to finish them or deal with them. But I have not seen anything significant in the House that indicates that a tax increase of anything that will be coming your way. We have difficulty with our health care issues to pay for it. Becoming very expensive. There's an expansion of Medicaid. There, of course, is the health care exchange. People have different feelings of effect, whether they like that or not. Affordable Care Act, some call it the Unaffordable Care Act, some call it the Obamacare. Whatever it is there, and it's happening right now, and we're trying our best to deal with it as we're in budget negotiations on the Senate side each night, because the House has passed the budget over to us, and we will send the budget back eventually, and it will have some changes in it, and then we will meet in a conference. So you will hear, you've probably heard about the House budget, and it has a lot of things in it, and then when it comes out of the Senate, a lot of those things disappear and go back, and there will be some arguments, but then there will be a conference committee that comes together that will determine what is going to end up in the budget, and that is the budget that we need to vote on in a final say. We have something called the Rupp-Arena issue, and that's the reason I mention that. It's close to us. Many of you probably go to the ball games or get to the Rupp-Arena or some event up there, the boys and girls basketball tournaments, different things that take place. So they want the state, you are the state, to give them $65 million so that they can take an endeavor of about $360 million. They had $5 million to study this, which they came up on their own. They've exhausted that amount of money, and they still don't have approval through the General Assembly. I think now in the House budget, there's something in there. Now on the Senate side, we have already removed it. So I'm probably not supposed to say that, but it's your money. We have some issues there. They also say now, because something came about that we did not know, they indicate now they need a 2% motel hotel tax increase plus the $65 million. Now all of this is predicated, a lot of these projects, on the ability of the state to borrow $2 billion to perform on the needs of this budget. It's a little less than that, but Mr. Dameron and Ms. King can explain to you to some degree the difficulties in borrowing $2 billion. We have refinanced much of the debt bonding that we had from years past because rates went down, but in also refinancing them to get better rates, we extended them out a number of years when they could have paid off in 6 or 7 years. Now they're out there for another 10 or 12 years. And so that increases our debt, puts us in very difficult positions 2 years from now to prepare any budget at all without major layoffs and major cuts to more departments in Frankfurt. This is what I call the shallow thinking of some that will add all of that bonding on there and not think about the next 2 years, which could be devastating not only for our schools, but for our teachers, our state employees, retired teachers programs. If we can't make the monies that we need to put into there to keep what we call the ARC, the money we need to put into the pension plans to keep their pensions and health care on track. So this bonding issue is the biggest cloud that surfaces over Frankfurt right now. How are we going to be willing to borrow that money? The Senate may agree to some bonding, but obviously not as much. There's some new school buildings in there for some districts, but only 1 or 2. You can see that some pieces of pork were tossed out to get the support of some to vote for the legislation, and I think in the Senate we're going to take a lot of that out, and it's going to take a whole different vision, which is going to start a little bit of a fight in Frankfurt, but it's every year that happens, and we resolve through it. With that said, I need to let the other two speak because you've got 2 fine state representatives here that do a wonderful job. I'm so proud to serve with both of them. Ms. King, as you know, comes out of the Mercer County area, has Washington County and a portion of Jessamine County over on the west side, and just does a fantastic job. And wherever I am, she's running circles around me because she's really in good shape, and and she knows what she's doing. And you all know Representative Dameron, who has served this community in the years past with his help on the House and me in the Senate. We have done things for Jessamine County that really have not happened in any other county in this state. If you look at the amount of revenues and appropriations that have come back to this county, there is no county per capita that gets anywhere close to the return of your tax dollars that have come back into this county. And I hope you agree for nice things through the county judge and the mayor's office, things that have come and the monies have been used to upgrade facilities such as what we're sitting in here today, even the animal shelter, just as we're standing here. If you haven't been through the new animal shelter, it's beautiful. The progress in our schools, the technology program that took place, that building that was erected, the US 68 highway improvements along 27, everything that has happened in this county has come at a large cost. I know it's a great convenience, and once those things are done, I know we take them for granted, but every time I come up down 68 or go up down 27 and see the great 4-laning that goes also to Camp Nelson, I'm very proud to live in a community where people like you have allowed me and given me the opportunity to serve, because these are not seats that we should take for granted. The three of us realize that we only get to serve here because you let us. And it's a great honor to serve you. And I can't tell you enough how much I appreciate the people of Jessamine County. They're just wonderful. They're great. They're beautiful people. I love everybody in this community. And I got to tell you, of all the individuals that we've had to do business with, and I know sometimes we haven't agreed, everyone's been so gracious and nice. If I see somebody in Nicholasville, because my family's been here since the late 1700s, I assume that I'm probably a cousin to them in some way. So whatever we say or do, I know that we're still family when it's over. Thank you very much.
Does it matter?
Thank you, Tom, and I appreciate those kind remarks. It's we've been Bob and Tom show for about 22 years, and you know, a lot of times we'll do things, we'll pass things in the house, and I'll pick up the phone and call him and say, "Beware, what's coming." But we talked about it, and actually he and I talked a lot about the budget and the bonding and my concerns as to how much bonding was in there. But one thing we know in the House, passing the budget's just kind of part of the process. As you pass it out of the House, you send it over to the Senate, and they're going to make their changes, and then the bill gets written in conference. So we're all aware of that. And for the most part, I put a kind of a summary of the budget out here for you that passed out of the House. The main focus of the budget is that we passed, for the most part, Governor Beshear's budget. The House leadership had worked with the governor in detail about what they tried to do, and I think the focus was to try to give him his chance of passing what he wanted to do down in the Senate, and so that's kind of what we did. We didn't make a lot of changes. Once you start going in and start making changes from what he had, he'd already gone all over the state promising all the projects everywhere, and so it wasn't very beneficial for us trying to take those out and then start to rewrite the budget. The budget's about 270 pages long. It's fairly involved. There's a little something, as you'll see in here, for everybody. He's learned after the first 6 years, Rob, how to take care of everybody and make everybody happy for the most part, and then it's up to us to say no, and so that's kind of where the budget process is. Road plan will come out this week, probably today. Senator Buford and I both have to get out of here by 9 o'clock or shortly there before, right after, because we've got committee hearings coming up. I have a committee hearing on appropriations and revenue. We're actually going to pass the road plan out today. The good news for Jessamine County, and I know Tom and I have been talking about projects and how we make sure we keep everything in the road plan. The road plan is really where most of the money, the available money, is left in state government to spend. We actually have money in that program. The good thing is Tom and I are both in seniority positions inside the House and the Senate, and so our voice gets heard a little stronger at times because of the longevity that we have. I serve on the Appropriations and Revenue Committee, as does he. So they need our vote there, and then they need our vote on the House floor. And so a lot of times we kind of have to hold our nose and vote for some things we prefer not to vote for in order to make sure that you all get what we need to get here. The road plan is in good shape coming out of the House. The eastern bypass, the bypass that goes around the east side of town. I know for those of you that are on this side of town will be pleased. I think the authorization has already been done to buy right away. There's about $30 million. Judges and I have been talking with a variety of people that are their property is being acquired, and we're already in the process of acquiring a lot of that real estate in order to make the bypass go. That money's already authorized, which means it's over in the bank account for the Department of Transportation to start spending. The next phase of the Eastern Bypass is the construction phase. And in the first 2 years of this biennium, there's about $30 million total. Those funds are in federal funds. When you do the road plan, there's two components to get into it. Number one, you want to have in the road plan the project. That's obviously important to have. But more importantly, you have to have the proper stream of money. In other words, the source of those funds that are going to be paying for that project. We have a lot of designations. We call them STP, SPP, SP, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all kinds of things that are in there. The key is in this biennium is that there's very little money for an SP. That's a state project funded project. Knowing that, I made sure that the first phase of the construction was under STP, and that's federal funds, and those are solid, guaranteed funds that are coming into the state, and they'll be available to start that construction process in 15 and 16. The second phase of the bypass is probably going to take 3 or 4 years to build. Is in 17, there's an additional $30 million set aside in the state road plan that will be passed this morning that will include a funding source called SPP. And SPP is a state project but priority. And we put language in the budget every year that says, Governor, you can do whatever project you want. However, you can't do an SP project until you do the SPP projects, which is our way of earmarking a specific project from the state government level or from the legislature to ensure that that project is completed first. And so, Christopher, that means that we're going to have the Eastern Bypass is funded. It'll be in the budget. It'll be funded accordingly, and we'll be moving forward. There's several other SPP projects that are in the budget. The Y intersection, I know a lot of you all are interested in that on the Tim over on the west side of the county. Actually, we'll have a hearing on April the 8th there at Wesley to talk about the various designs and what they're going to do with the Y intersection. Brandon Road is a substantial project that is a winner in this budget as well. The Brandon Road process from really Southland Christian Church all the way across to 27 is in the process of design phase. We don't know exactly what's going to happen there. It's not going to be intrusive, I don't think, on the landowners because most of the property will come from the farm side of that road. But that road is well underway. It's a safety issue, and the Transportation Cabinet and I both put a high priority on that road. In addition, extending Brandon Crossing Brandon Road through Brandon Crossing to Tates Creek, which would, and hopefully will alleviate some pressure off of the intersections going into Fayette County, is also in this proposal, and it's also SPP funded. So that project should be on the fast burner. I think it's important. That project's important from not as much from a safety standpoint, but more importantly from an economic development standpoint for the county. Brandon Crossing is will be, and hopefully Mayor, will be a fast-growing area. If we ever get over a couple of hurdles that are out there, this provision should help in that it will give access to Tates Creek Pike as well as US 27 for folks that are building back into the back of Brandon Crossing, be able to shoot across Tates Creek and help them move through that process. Also in the road plan, the I-75 connector remains as it was before. It is federally funded. Those were federal earmarks that started that road process, and the evaluation is still in place. I know that's of interest to a lot of folks, and Larry Lewis and some other folks that are running for a magistrate out there. So the road plan's in pretty good shape. We continue to keep funding at the road tax or gas tax level of December. And I know some people say that's a tax increase, some people are going to say that's a tax freeze. The issue is that if we don't do that, we're going to have a substantial decrease in the amount of money that's available to do maintenance on our roads. I know, Judge, that's important for you and the county, and Russell, money that comes in from municipal and county aid. Had we not done that, it was estimated it would cost Jessamine County, that's us, $51,000 in that continued money that takes care of our potholes and all the things. And God knows with this winter, we're going to have a ton of them. So our maintenance money was maintained, and so we should be getting those monies into the county government coffers. So it all over and over, the road plan is in good condition, and I'm sure that Tom will make sure all those things remain, and if he wants to enhance them a little bit, we're always good to do that. He and I are pretty good over the years about, we'll start something in the House, and then he'll start something in the Senate. We never, ever put the same project into the budget process, and the reason for that is that when leadership starts cutting the pie up and they're sitting in this room trying to decide which projects they're going to do, we never want to just say, well, we'll do this project and that takes care of Tom, and the House said, well, that takes care of Bob, so we don't get anything else. So we used to do the Bob and Tom show with leadership, would actually plan these things, and so I'd put money in and he'd put money in. I remember one time we had the Central Kentucky Blood Center came to both of us, and they needed $500,000. One of them wanted $500,000 for one purpose, and they said, you know, we're going to try to raise some money for the other one. So Tom and I got together, and I put $500,000 in for one purpose. He put $500,000 in for the other purpose, and they never figured out that it was doubled up. So anyway, I would concur on tax reform. I don't think you'll see any effort coming out of the House on the tax reform issues. The adage that's often mentioned in the House and Senate is that people who get a tax cut never remember, and people who get a tax increase never forget. And so they do remember in November, and so I just don't think in an election year that tax reform is going to go very far. The governor introduced a tax plan, but I don't know how much heart he had into it, because he sent his lieutenant governor over to the House A&R committee to pitch the plan. Steve wasn't anywhere to be seen. The Rupp Arena project, I agree, is in deep trouble. I think there's two reasons. One, Fayette County still does not have a financing plan. They've set up a financing committee made up of bankers and investment folks, people that do what I do. I'm not on the committee, but people who do what I do. They have yet to meet. So, you know, a lot of legislators are saying, you're asking us to raise taxes on the hotel motel tax when a lot of the hotel motel industry in Lexington is opposed to it. You're asking us to give you $65 million for state funding to infuse into the project, and your own financing committee has never met and talked about it. In addition, the bill that would allow them to raise that hotel motel tax just got dropped a week and a half ago. The last day that you could actually file a bill, it's yet to be heard. And so I talked to Mayor Gray on Saturday, and he was concerned about how we're going to get all this done. And I just told him, I said, Mayor, you're you know, it's the fourth quarter, and you're down 30 points, and there's only 2 minutes left on the clock. I mean, it's just going to be hard to get anything done, and it's just the end of the session, and we're just not dealing with things very well at that point in time. The other big issue that's kind of out there, I guess, would be LIFT, the local option sales tax provision. I know Kim and I have talked about this, Tom and I have talked about it. I don't think that bill's going to pass either. And there's a lot of concern from the rural areas and from the urban areas outside of Fayette County, Jefferson County, and Bowling Green. What I'm hearing from a lot of our chamber members here and a lot of you is that, hey, if we let Fayette County raise the sales tax 1%, we'll all end up Christopher paying for their project when we go to Fayette County and buy things with, and then we'll come back, we'll leave our tax dollars up there, and we'll be paying for their projects. And so that concern is shared by a lot of people, not only in Jessamine County and all the calls that I got. Kim and I talked about it one night, and she said she'd heard from the state chamber, they were all for it, but everybody she talked to in Jessamine County was against it. And I said, well, here's why. And so we talked about why that's not going to move. So I don't think they call it lift. I don't think that's going to go anywhere. Expanded gaming seems to be falling on its sword, so to speak, in the House. Speaker Stumbo has said that the House is not going to vote until the Senate votes. The Senate said the Senate's not going to vote until the House votes. So my guess is we'll adjourn April 15th with neither one of us voting. I don't know if you see anything different in the Senate, but that's kind of where I get that one. There's a lot of bills that have moved. There's 12 bills that have actually been signed by the governor at this point in time. So, we've got 12 pieces of legislation to the governor. All the heavy lifting in the legislative session is always done the last 2 weeks. We spend 2.5 months preparing for the last 2 weeks, and that's when the budget gets done. It's when the road plan gets done. It's when any kind of significant tax changes get done. That's when business development, economic development issues get done. And it all comes together through a process of cooperation and working. And sometimes, as a legislator, and I'll tell you, for the last 22 years, sometimes you've got to hold your nose and vote for a piece of legislation to move it through the process because there's something that's important for you coming back. It's just no different than in business. It's no different in your relationships personally. Sometimes it's a give and take process, and that's what's getting ready to take place over the next 2 years, or 2 weeks, is kind of that give and take process of trying to get things done. George, you'd asked for the ferry to be funded. It's funded in the road plan with federal money, so it's solid. Your funding for the ferry is solid, and the language that Congressman Barr is working on in getting a provision put into the budget that would not require a federal licensed boat captain. If that moves, the language will be in the budget to codify and move that through, that the state would be able to then set up their own licensing procedure per Andy's bill. Both of those pieces of language are in the road plan that will pass today out of A&R. So with that, I think we can answer questions, and we'll turn it over to Kim and kind of go from there.
One thing I didn't mention, that Congressman Barr and Congressman Guthrie both have representatives here. If you raise your hands, in case y'all need some more money, see them after the meeting.
They just printed, right.
Good morning. I am Kim King, and I know both of the gentlemen have meetings they need to get to, so if it's okay, I'd like to talk a little bit about the session, and then if you all have any more time, I would love to come back and kind of introduce myself to you and let you know what makes Kim King tick. I am joined by my husband this morning. This is Carrie. We've been married 34 years, but again, if we've got a little bit of time after we talk about the session, I'd love to come up and talk a little bit more and introduce myself that way. But talking about the 2014 session, I'll just give you a little brief overview. Both the gentlemen have done a great job recapping from both of their perspectives. I'll just talk a little bit about what happened last week. We started out on Wednesday with House Bill 445. That was the revenue portion to help pay for all of the budget items that we were supposed to consider immediately following. I was elected in 2010, but it's my understanding in 2008, the House and the Senate, Republicans and Democrats all agreed once they raised the gas tax on the wholesale gas price, that they agreed that if the price went up, they would let the tax follow it, and if the gas wholesale price went down, they would let the gas tax follow that as well. So I voted against House Bill 445 based on that. It's my understanding that that pledge was made again in the House and the Senate, leadership on both ends. Plus, I know that's going to hit Kentuckians every day when they fill up their gas tank in paying that additional 1.5 cents per gallon. So those are the two reasons I voted against House Bill 445 on Wednesday. It was rather interesting. We were told to prepare to vote on the operating budget, the general budget, immediately following the revenue portion. But as soon as we took that vote, and it was very, very close, Floor Leader Rocky Atkins said that we would delay our budget vote until the following day. So when we came back in on Thursday, I had prepared my vote based on the House committee substitute. Just as was explained, the governor sent his budget proposal over, but then the House A&R committee created their House committee substitute, and that's what we were prepared to make a decision on the House floor. When we came back in on Thursday, Chairman Rand called a floor amendment, which was a 269-page document based on the governor's proposal, not the committee substitute that was passed out of committee. So we debated that for about 45 minutes, the parliamentary merits of taking that measure. And it was interesting. There were a lot of little goodie projects that were added in at the last minute. It was pretty obvious just to garner support for going this route. So I voted no on that after 2.5 hours of debate on the House floor. What it does is increases Kentucky's debt by $2 billion with a B. It increases unfunded school mandates to over 80 school districts across the Commonwealth, mandating a 2% increase in salaries, which we know our teachers need that, but then we don't give you any money to implement that. It also sweeps, which just is a nice clean way, a nice friendly way of saying taking money out of one account to help shore up the general budget. And this bill does that to the public employees health benefit trust funds. It sweeps funds out of that to do that. Again, just a lot of borrowing, a lot of spending, a lot of debt. So I voted no on that proposal on Thursday. I think you all have covered pretty much everything else. I don't want to waste your time repeating everything else about that. Would y'all like to open it up to questions at this point? And then again, if you've got some time, I'd love to come back and visit with you in a minute. So.
Questions? Any questions? Mike, I know. Oh, yes, go ahead.
Are we a balanced budget?
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
based on borrowing to make the bottom line come out.
So it's not a balanced budget?
We wouldn't call it balanced in our personal accounts. If you consider taking out more money on your Visa to pay your bills, but then you still owe your Visa, then you're balanced. But I mean, we can't do that in our private finances, so I say no.
there is a trick that commonly happens in appropriations of construction, say for infrastructure things, projects, what if it's not in Nicholasville, or we call it a pork project, but if it's in Nicholasville, we call it an infrastructure investment. Those things are generally undervalued in what they predict in the budget they will cost. And there are always overruns. We even have built into some language that if they go over 10 or certain percent, we will add more funds. So that really leaves us in an instructional balance with many of these projects that are posted in there. So I think we all go in knowing that there is some imbalance in the issues. And it's all based on projections that were done within the last 12 months. We have forecasting groups that come, mostly UK and U of L, but there are a couple of other actuaries that come in to talk to us. But I think we all very well know that we cross our fingers, and many times we hit it right on the nail. Sometimes we come in a little less, but we can always have some unpredicted emergencies, tornadoes, ice storms that blow the budget out of proportion. And I don't know that we have the contingency funds in this budget to be prepared for something like that over the next 2-year period.
About $100 million in contingency funds under the rainy day fund is in the provision that went out. When we talk about a balanced budget, you have to look at whether or not it's balanced based on operating expenditures or because you borrow money, just like each of you borrow money to build a house. You borrow money to buy a car, most of you do. So the state cannot really issue tax-exempt municipal bonds to borrow money to operate on, unlike the federal government. The federal government prints paper, they run deficit spending. It's different at the state level than it is at the federal level. Just like the fiscal court, Judge, you can't run a deficit budget for any length of time. You can use your operating, your general fund monies that you've built up over the years, your surplus, to do that. The state and county budgets are not like the federal budget when we talk about operating deficits. We don't operate at a deficit. Now, yes, we borrow money to build projects, we borrow money to build roads, we borrow money and, sign tolls and so on. So it's all in, as Tom says, how you want to view it, I guess, but for the most part, Chairman Rand has indicated that, and the people that sign off on these things at LRC indicate that they are balanced from an operational standpoint. But yes, we do borrow money to build projects with.
We have some funding in there for, say, some iPads, computers, and things for the schools. And I think that's on maybe a 15-year bond or so. Well, that equipment's only going to last. In 3 years, it's not current stuff. 5 years, it's old. 10 years, you can't find it. It's gone. You can't find any parts to repair it with. So that is a problem when we borrow money to make purchases like that, and the length of the term is far beyond the value of the product that we're purchasing in a short period of time. So that gives us a great deal of concern. I think that perhaps on some of that equipment, I've debated this in our committee that we should look into a lease. I say we should at least look at leasing that equipment so that in 2 years or 3 years we can, now I know that may be a little bit more money, but I think rather than having it just depreciate to nothing and then you're still paying this debt, might be a better, and keep the schools in more up-to-date technology proper equipment to turn those items in and get new ones, on the iPads. Because, we're putting less money in books, but, if you've watched these in grandchildren or your great-grandchildren, they don't have books anymore. They just type everything out. And I don't know if you remember the basketball coach, Billy Gillespie. Some of you may have been around him. I was standing next to him one day, and his hand was just going like this. And I said, "Billy, what are you doing?" And he said, "I'm texting." I said, well, he pulled his phone out, and sure enough, he could text without looking at the phone. Wow. This is amazing what people can do. But he did a lot of other things too, and he's not here anymore. But
without looking at his hands.
Yeah, without looking at his hands. And these kids now, it's all, and I know, Matt, you all know in the school, it's all high tech. I've got my grandson, when he was 2 years old, he was on this iPad playing games and going at it. And of course, we had to get a protective rubber thing for the iPad because he would throw it on the floor if he didn't win. He's going to be just perfect at a UK ball game. So anyway, go ahead, Kim.
I was just going to mention too, to give you another perspective, based on what was passed out of the House, and again, I voted against it, but it will increase our debt to revenue ratio to 7.5% in Kentucky. And we are already the third worst as far as credit rating in the entire United States, third only to California and Illinois. So I have severe problems with that. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. I'm new to your chamber. I'm Patty Breeze, and have a little dog kennel in Jessamine County, and that's why I joined the chamber. But,
where is it and what is it?
It's Clearview Kennel.
Yes.
On 169 and Woods Road.
Sure.
Very close to
I know where that is, yeah.
Okay, good. Bring your dogs.
Okay.
But the past 33 years, I've been in the financial service business, particularly in the health insurance business, providing health insurance for individuals and groups. Now, we have expanded Medicaid in this state to go along with Obamacare. And I want to know how the three of you feel we are going to afford this when the federal dollars go away, because this is going to be a big tsunami hitting our state. And I want all of you to know, and this is something I learned yesterday going to Kentucky Connect for a training session for agents, that people can get Medicaid coverage no matter what their financial assets are. If you own land, if you're land rich, you have $1 million farm or more, and you have no income, you can get Medicaid. Did you all know that?
That's right.
You can get Medicaid. Assets, financial assets, don't make a bit of difference. Now, I want to know when federal dollars go away, what we are going to do as a state to afford all this. Because 80 to 90% of the people that are getting coverage on the exchange are Medicaid.
I totally agree, and we can't afford it. We can't afford it. And just a little background, I voted against the Medicaid expansion when we took that up a year or two ago. And then when it got to the governor, he completely gutted everything that we did in the legislature and did that on his own. That's one thing I failed to mention. Another reason I voted against the bill is it codified and put exact numbers in there for shoring up our version of Obamacare in Kentucky. So.
Well, I'd like to address that. First off, the budget didn't shore up. The budget language and dollars that were put in was actually federal dollars that were already coming to the state, and then put that in. We operate based on what the federal rules say on ACA. Not a single one of the three of us voted for Obamacare, regardless of what people said. Now, in my article this week, and Mike knows it already, is that the House Republican caucus had issued a statement that they were going to make this issue a political issue that they were going to use in the campaigns and try to tie House Democrats to voting for Obamacare. We didn't vote for Obamacare. None of us were able to vote for that. But what we did have is we have federal money that's coming into the state. The governor had the leading economist in this state run an analysis of the Medicaid expansion. And the analysis indicated that the gain, financial gain to the state, exceeds $1 billion over the next 4 or 5 years. The reason for that is that those people who receive or who go on Medicaid are not getting the money. The people that get the money are the health care providers and the hospitals that provide the care and the service. And those people all pay taxes. And in this state, we have a 6% income tax. And so all of those dollars that are coming in from the federal government are going into our economy. They're being turned over and changed over. I'm not an economist, but I do know, and I've learned over the years, to respect and trust the value of experts when they tell us those things. And so that's why the governor decided to expand Medicaid. It's not a Democrat-Republican issue. Governor Kasich in Ohio has adopted it. A lot of Republican governors across the country have adopted the Medicaid expansion solely for that same purpose. Now, where are we in 3 years from now? I don't think any of us know for sure. The cost of providing that care will have to start picking up about 2 to 3% in the first few years, up to 5%, and after 10 years, 10% of that cost. But you're still going to have all those dollars coming in, infusing into the economy. The healthcare providers, the hospital associations, all of those people asked the governor to expand Medicaid, and the reason they did that was because with that expansion into the federal law, disproportionate share payments going for indigent care are no longer available. And so that means that they would be providing care to people that couldn't provide money to pay for that care. They're required. The hospital can't turn anybody down. So when they come into that hospital and they have to get care and there's no way of paying for that care, rural hospitals in states that haven't done the Medicaid expansion are closing. South Carolina's governor opted out. She didn't want any of that federal money. So because of that, I can tell you, I can stand here and testify with a hand on the Bible that there are rural hospitals across the state of South Carolina that will not be there this time next year. And it's because they're providing indigent care without any compensation. And they can't turn them away. They don't have any choice. So that's where the governor was on the issue. I don't look at this as a vote for or against Obamacare. Obamacare is all about individual mandates and employer mandates and restrictions on the type of plans that can be sold and guaranteed coverages and all the provisions that I don't think necessarily work in the process. They may work if 100% of the people were part of that, but we're already hearing that at least a third of the uninsured is still not going to purchase health insurance because it's too expensive. And so they don't put a priority on buying health insurance. Most of you know I've made the last 22 years of my service in the General Assembly dealing with health care issues. And Dr. DeWeese and I, we mentioned it on the House floor this week, actually passed a bill in Kentucky that set up the high-risk pool. And I think it's stabilized and helped our health insurance market. I think it was working here. I think it was working in other states. I'm not a big fan of the Obamacare one-size-fits-all federal government issue. But I don't think from a Medicaid expansion, after the governor had all the economics folks study and analyze that, and we're talking about PricewaterhouseCoopers and others, that he felt like he couldn't do anything but accept the expansion because of the impact to the state. And now we're there. I don't know how we defund or not take that federal money that's coming into the state. We just got a report this week that as of February 28th, there's 2,100 people in Jessamine County that have signed up for Medicaid. So are we not going to fund that? Or, I mean, which one of the three of us is going to go and say, hey, you signed up for Medicaid and you now have Medicaid. Oh, but by the way, we're not going to take it since it's all federal money. We don't want to do that. And you don't have it again, so just go get your care for free at the hospital, or go to the doctor and get your care for free, and you expect them to provide that coverage for no reimbursement. I mean, that's not fair to them. So I don't know the answers. I will tell you I don't know the answers, but I do know from an expansion of Medicaid, the governor made that decision based on economics as much as anything else. And as I said, it's not a Democrat-Republican issue. People that were staunchly opposed to President Obama, governors who were staunchly opposed to President Obama, have accepted the Medicaid expansion because they've run the numbers. How long that lasts, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, we don't know. The governor has continued to say, if it gets unsustainable, we'll pare it back at that point in time. But in the meantime, we're taking the federal dollars. And I just don't think it's an endorsement of Obamacare in any shape, form, or fashion, because you're health insurance agents, you know, David Thornton's a health insurance agent, he knows the whole focus of this Federal Health Care Act really was based out of Massachusetts. The model didn't work very well. It's still kind of out there, but that's what really Obamacare, or the Affordable Care Act, is. It's about individual mandates, it's about employer mandates, it's about controlling what has to be offered in a health insurance plan. You can't sell a plan, you can't buy a plan that doesn't include certain benefit structures. That's what really the Affordable Care Act's all about. And you know, I think the question is still if it'll ever work. But I think theoretically it probably could work if everybody had to participate. But we're hearing a third or better are still going to say, I'm not going to put that as a priority. And you know, some young people, my son, he has health insurance, but a lot of his peers don't, because they're invincible. Nothing ever happens to them. So why am I going to spend money buying this health insurance product over here when I'd rather spend the money on car payment, or I'd rather spend the money on beer in some cases? And so that's the real problem. And I don't know how government has ever been successful at making people do anything. I mean, we got folks, how many people drive around in cars today that you're going to pass up and down 27 if you drive to Lexington that don't have any car insurance, but yet we've made that a law, right? 14%. You know, actually it's probably higher than that, but I mean, you know, that's kind of my long answer to a short question.
The Medicaid issue, I believe that we're always in Washington, it's very fragile. We could be one election away from dissolving 98% of it. You would keep the ability, I think at that moment, to keep your children up to age 26, and you know, the pre-existing condition issue would be waived so you could get insurance. With that said, about 24%, 25% of those that are coming into, because everybody thinks the Connect is for the individuals that are looking for insurance on the open market to get it. It is predominantly switching people to Medicaid. It's trying to drive them towards the Medicaid side of the issue. What will it cost us? I got an analysis about 2.5 years from now. We're looking at about $157 million that we will have to put general fund dollars in to keep the program going. We assume we're going to bottom out at about 1.1 or 1.2 million individuals in Kentucky on Medicaid when this is all settles out. There's only 4.3 million people in Kentucky. How long will the government, there's no assurances that they'll match us on these certain dollars, and so that 157 could be 200 or 300 million we need to put in at that time additional, or it could be less, but I'm assuming it will be more. But I think if the vote were taken today in both the House and the Senate in Washington, before the November election, this thing would fail flat. The individuals that voted on it, I don't think they realized, I know they didn't know what they were voting on in most cases. And, you know, when the president said you can keep your insurance if you like it, you can't. About 8 million people in this United States or more lost their insurance policy. In Kentucky, I think we still probably have about 300,000 individuals searching for some insurance that don't get enough subsidy to make it interesting to them to hook into the exchange. So we have a problem. A lot of people signed up, and the numbers that we are reporting, a lot of people signed up, but they didn't make their payments January the 1st. So we need a new reporting of how many people are in, how many people are out. The exchange here has worked pretty well, but understand it's predominantly been Medicaid, where I think the nation was looking to see how many could get insurance that maybe were finding it difficult to get. Now, with that said, the new standards that come out, and even the governor or the president's spokesman one day, you probably saw it on TV, he said now people can spend more time at home because if they can get their employer to drop them back to 30 hours a week, that's beneficial to them to not work and make that money to buy insurance. They can stay at home and get it for free or get some subsidy to it. Many of the policies out there that people are taking and we're bragging about have a $12,000 deductible. I mean, what good's that? Well, I guess if you come to some big issue of a big problem that you have health-wise, yes. But I think the reports are still to determine if we're on the right step here or not. But the way it was designed was to remove issues, set plans, and you got to remember when this whole bill was designed, it was designed with the big insurance companies in the room writing it. So they're not going to lose any ground on here. And even though the money comes here to pay for Medicaid and it'll boost, yeah, maybe the economy from the providers getting the money, folks, that's your money. You send it to Washington, they send it back here, and it gets spent here. Well, so the states that have the most per capita individuals on Medicaid, yes, they'll get some more of the money, but that's not the way I would run a business. You know, to try to have the most Medicaid individuals in the nation so you could stir the most money out of the Washington tax dollars. I think everything that both these individuals said, I don't disagree with what they're talking about. This is a mixed bag of everything. But I know today that bill couldn't pass. And one election, I mean, if the Senate, some say the Republicans will pick up 5 to 10 seats in the Senate, and I think the House will grow on its Republican side. I think we're coming to a showdown on health care as to whether it's going to survive or not. And what will survive of it is debatable. Will it stir the insurance industry up again when it goes out of existence? Yes. It'll be rough, good and bad. Question?
Most government programs take on a life of their own. Once they're started, I mean, you just mentioned, what do I do with the 2,100 people that are already signed up for it now? Is there anybody in Frankfurt now saying, looking at, okay, if it goes away from the federal side, what is Kentucky going to do? Because you still have the 2,100 people that signed up here. So at some point, whether you do it today or whether you do it 3 years from now, you're going to tell those folks, you got to do something else.
We have a lot of people coming off of Medicaid periodically. They find work, they get jobs, or we discover, as you know, they sign up and we find out later they shouldn't have had it, and we try to cut them off, get them out of the Medicaid system. What will happen if the program ceases to exist? I would assume there would be a certain amount of time that Congress would pass some legislation that would gradually slow it down, which would mean they'd have to probably go out and look for jobs. Newt Gingrich did it when he said we're going to, and Newt Gingrich said the same thing. He said we're going to take all the welfare recipients and we're going to interview every one of them again, if you remember, about 1990, 91. Well, 25% of them didn't come in for the interview because they knew they were cheating to get the welfare to start with. I would imagine a lot of these individuals will disappear, especially those that have large amounts of assets but have schemed the system. it's a difficult task.
The governor has addressed exactly what you're saying, and he said that if it's unsustainable, we'll pull back.
Just to follow up about the hospitals and the healthcare providers, the hospitals and healthcare providers that I've worked with in the last 3 years have said that since we've had expanded Medicaid, that they are operating 90 to 120 days before being paid. So they're having to go out and take out loans just to pay their salaries and their expenses, their operating expenses. So I just think that's indefensible. And then also about our rural hospitals, based on what we are now, our rural hospitals are definitely in the crosshairs. I know in Mercer County, based on the new requirements that we're in, we are less than 10 miles from McDowell and Danville. So, I mean, James B. Hagan in Harrodsburg is definitely on the chopping block. So I will continue to do any and everything I can to defund or get rid of Obamacare at any crossroad.
I've got to go. I've got a meeting.
Be careful. Have a good day.
Thank you all so much. Appreciate being with you. Amy. Thank you all.
We can answer another question or two, and then I've got to scoot too, and then actually Judge and I and Tom all are going to be on a conference call, us while we're driving. Hands-free. While we're driving to Frankfort, we have a issue with our court complex. We have a severe problem, and we're trying to work with AOC and try to fix that and figure out a direction we're going to go. I had actually filed an amendment to provide funding for a new court facility or a court complex here. In the House version of the budget, AOC did not have the engineering information back to us, and so I didn't call the amendment on the House floor. Tom and I have been in contact with them. Neil's been involved in all those discussions as well. But we have a significant problem with our court, not our courthouse, but our district court annex, I guess would be the best terminology. So we both have to, all three of us have to be on a conference call with the engineers and with AOC's directors and staff, and to see if there's something we can do in the budget from the Senate side. And I have commitment from House leadership that if the Senate adds that judge to the budget, that our folks will agree to it in conference. Let's do another question or two, and then we got two. I think George had a question first.
Yeah, Bob, there again, you're talking about something that's occurring here in the county on local level. We have to deal with county government. But a lot of things happen in Frankfort, have an impact on county government. High percentage of bills that you all deal with daily. But there's two now the legislature I'd like to have some input on. One is the 911 funding bill, and the other is the PVA bill. Because that one, the state sees fund PVA, and they have a percentage of tax on homes, special districts. And that's why you hopefully raise everybody's taxes, special district taxes, in order, reduce the funding for the district.
PVA, very briefly, PVA issue was an issue that the governor put in the budget. House took that out. That's one of the provisions that the House made a change in. What George is saying is that the governor didn't fund the property valuation administration offices, something to the tune of about $30 million. He assumed in his budget that they could then charge all the other taxing districts, which would be fire, health departments, libraries, an additional fee in order to make up that $30 million. The House rejected that issue. We heard from a lot of those folks. It would have been, we believe, a tax increase to all the local levels to pay for that, and so it was not passed. The 911 issue, Martha Jane King has a bill in place that is looking at doing a total refinancing of that. I think that's still stuck in committee. The concern that George is raising is that a lot of folks have gone from landline to cell phones, and so cell phones are not reimbursing the 911 system as fast as the landlines, or they don't pay what the landlines pay. So as we have a number of landlines go down and number of cell phones go up, then that creates a funding inequity and a problem in local governments. I think, Neil, you all are subsidizing the 911 system here from a county government. We did pass a bill that's moving. I think it's going to move. It's called Smart 911. Jessamine County, under Judge Cassidy, has been a leader in that. There's 6 counties in the state that are actually serving as a pilot project on Smart 911. If you haven't gone on to their website and filled out the information, I would highly encourage you to do so. It lets you actually download specific information about your location, so when your number comes up, either the cell phone number or otherwise, on the 911 call, they'll know everything from that you have 2 dogs and 3 cats in your household, to that you're on specific medications, and that you have maybe an elderly parent that's living in part of the house. All those types of information can be inputted. So I would ask that you all think about doing that and taking advantage of something that, under Judge Cass's leadership, Jessamine County is one of, I think, 6. Fayette County's one. We're one here. But the PVA issue was resolved in the House. I talked to Tom. They're not going to add it back in the Senate, so it's going to stay.
That's a good question, George. There are actually 3 approaches to solving the 911 funding issue. Martha Jane King does have one, and it charges a flat fee regardless of how you charge that card, the little prepaid cards that you get at a retailer. The other 2, one sends all of the decision making back to the local governments, so you may be interested in that. And then the third is a percentage at point of sale. So let's use Walmart as an example. You would go in and pre-charge your card again, and it would be based on a percentage and not the flat fee that Martha Jane's bill considers. The problem that I have with Martha Jane's is my research has shown me that our low-income friends, when they go in and reload their cards, it's usually $25 a week that they load their card for. So if it were, say, $1 on that $25 charge, it would mean more and have more of an impact on those low-income folks than if a teenager went in and put $200 or $300 on their prepaid card. So just a different approach, but there are 3 versions kind of going through.
And adding, in addition to the problems, if Senate Bill 99 passes, and there would be fewer and fewer landlines, in some cases our seniors would lose their landlines. If that bill passes, then I think the erosion in your budget would be even greater. And so, it's still a debate that's kind of going on. You can imagine all the powerful groups in the various cell phone industries, TracFone, some of the others, their whole focus is not to pay any taxes, which gives them a higher competitive rate against the others that do. Verizon, Sprint, and AT&T have really not fought the initiative. The main objection to the loading of the card seems to be coming from TracFone, which has got more money than Carter's got pills. So,
but that's the way technology is sending us. We've got 2 grown children that are married, and nobody at any of their households has a landline. And then my parents, and Lynn's a relative, I just got to say hey to her before she leaves. But anyway, my parents, both on the other end of the age spectrum, they didn't have a landline. They only had cell service too. So I think it's just definitely a way that technology is moving us from landline service to wireless. And the Senate Bill 99 that Bob's referring to, it passed with unanimous support, I believe, out of the Senate and came out of our committee with no dissenting votes. So,
but it's stuck now.
Is it stuck? So that means House leadership's holding it up.
You're talking about the AT&T bill?
Yeah, the AT&T bill that lied to her committee. That's the bill. And I will tell you that I've heard from almost all of our senior citizens in Jessamine County, and I've not had one of them say they're for it, because they're all concerned that they're going to lose their lifeline. The issue that you have to have a bill, as you know, you got to have a landline in order for Lifeline to work. It does not work off cell phone. So I think that the Speaker and some others in the House leadership, after it came out that AT&T wasn't truthful. See, there's this thing about committees, and we both have to go. But when they come and testify, people come and testify in front of us, they're not sworn. So they can tell us anything they want to. And they say, well, it's up to you to figure out whether we're lying to you or not. Interesting. But anyway, I'm not going to vote for the bill because of what I've heard from our senior citizens in Jessamine County. And AT&T is not going to get my vote. I mean, my vote's not for sale to them or anyone else.
Neither's mine.
And I know yours is not. And so I just think that bill's in deep, deep trouble because it came out that they weren't truthful in the committee. And most members, whether they're for or against an issue, when somebody lies to Kim or they lie to me, she's my sister. And if they'll lie to her, they'll lie to me down the road. So, I mean, I think they did themselves a great disservice when it came out that took place. So I think 99's in deep trouble. Thank you all.
Before y'all leave, isn't it great to have such spirited discussion? You know, we don't always agree on every issue or matter, but, you know, we're here for the betterment of our community, our business community, and the individuals of Jessamine County, Mercer County also. And, you know, I just really appreciate all three of these folks, the things that they've done over the years for Jessamine County. And I'd just like to give them a big hand.